Okay, so in this video I'm just going to be showing you guys how to tie a basic flashback pheasant tail nymph. For this example I'm using a Camazan B170 with a 2mm tungsten beadhead slotted, and you guys can use whatever you want, of course. So to start out, just get some thread and wrap it in behind the beadhead and wrap that right the way back to the bend, and then come with your scissors and snip off the excess thread. Then you want to get some pheasant tail. This is just some red pheasant tail. I like the colour of the nymphs that you get from it, but I use a bunch of different colours. Take about 10 fibres of that, snip them off and line up the tips so that you get a nice uniform distribution, and then line them up against the shank of the hook, pinch them, do a loose wrap between your fingers, pinch that, and then pull it down onto the hook shank. Then do a couple of tighter wraps, come around the front of that point and do a couple of more wraps just to sort of secure that in place, and come up the hook a little bit, about halfway. Then all you need to do is take a bit of wire. This is just copper wire that I took from a cable that I reused. I don't believe in buying wire anymore, since I found out that you go to the op shop or whatever, anything you've got broken that's got electronic cables, if you just snip them open with a pair of scissors or something, they're absolutely stacked full of wire, much like this one I'm using here. Then wrap forward with your thread to about the 3/4 point. Take your pheasant tail fibres and just wrap, and then pinch against the shank, then do another wrap, pinch against the shank, another wrap, pinch against shank, and then come up, take the thread around, pinch, keeping that thread tight, otherwise the whole bundle is going to jump, and then do another couple of tighter whips and take that up to just behind the beadhead. Then this is the point where you wrap your ribs in, so I like to use a pair of hackle pliers like this just to nick the end of that wire with, and then just sort of carefully wrap that in nice and evenly. It's a bit annoying with the camera, but we'll do our best here. Now usually I do tie this really quickly, this fly, and I can tie a bunch of them in a short period of time, but just trying to be careful here for this video. So just get a fairly nice, even, uniform spread. Then bring your wire over the top of the hook, bring the thread over the top of that, just punch that in there. Release hackle pliers, do a few wraps just to lock that wire in place. Come with some wire clippers. These are just like a kid's jewelry set kind of pair of clippers. Now you'll find there'll be a little prick of wire there, and that's usually quite sharp from the point that it's been snipped, so come with your finger and just bend that down and lay it along the top of the hook there, just so it's not pointing upwards, because that'll mean it'll cut your thread. And then just take the thread over it and wrap over it a few times to protect the thread from being snipped at a later point. Now what you're going to do is add the flash. So this is just some flash bow material, and I just take like 2 or 3 strands of that and snip them from the bundle like this. Here they are. Just a bunch of like little strands, and then I take them and sort of wrap them around the thread like this. Hopefully you guys will see that. And then I pinch them all together so they are wrapped like that. Come around with the thread, pull down onto the top of that hook and lock them in place with a few wraps just over the base. Now pull back the pheasant tail fibres from the front, just like that. Cinch them in. and go get some peacock herl. This is just cheap peacock herl off the internet, and take one strand of that. You gotta be careful with this stuff, because if you take too thin of a strand it can snap. It's quite brittle. So here's one here I'm using, and on the end there'll be like a little bit of dead or white herl from where they had it in the bundle there. Just snip that off, because you don't want that on your fly. Tie the tip of the herl just into that top bit there, wrap it in, sort of pull down all that big clump of ingredients in that top quarter of the fly, just so it's fairly uniform and smooth. Then take your thread to behind the bead there and start wrapping carefully with your ostrich herl. It's really brittle, so be very gentle with it. Pull over the thread, pinch that in. Do a few wraps of thread either side of that. Come with your scissors and just snip that down close. Then all you need to do is take all of the pheasant tail fibres that are not the tail and just sort of wrap them over top and pinch them in behind the bead head, just like that. Pull that tight. Do a couple of wraps, one behind, one in front. Come with your scissors again and snip that. Try not to leave much of a base left, because that'll deform the fly a little bit. Then take your flashback, do the same thing. That's just going to be the little flashy shiny point that the fish are going to be attracted to if they don't get attracted to the fly itself. Just going to add a little bit of reflectiveness. Snip them off. Then come with your whip finisher tool here. This I just use like a basic one like that. Hopefully you can make it out, kind of. Anyway, come with whip finish behind that bead head there. One is necessary, more are not necessary, so don't worry about it. It'll just make a bulge in your fly, make it look worse. It's not super important, you can do a bunch if you feel like, but since I have glue, I don't. Just come and tidy it up a little bit with your scissors. Now all you need is some UV glue. So this here is Solar Res. I don't know if you guys are going to pick that up. It's just a UV resin, and come with that carefully, because this stuff I've just started using and it's quite easy to use too much. So just do a little blob on there for the wing case, and make sure you include the head in that, because you want to get it over the thread. And there's a little too much on there, so the other thing is remember to use enough so that you can spread it out, because you want to cover the back of the fly as well. And then come with just like any sort of piece of metal or any sort of stick, and just come and smooth over it, pull some over the back of the fly, just drape it over the ribbing, because you want to make sure the ribbing doesn't come apart, because that's quite a vulnerable spot on your fly, and just sort of tidy up the fly a bit, make it quite even. And then come with your UV torch and just brush over it, because this Solar Res stuff, it's quite fast to dry, especially with a UV torch, but even without, it does dry fairly quickly. And that should basically be done. Give it a little touch with your finger, it should feel fairly hard now. And there you have it, a flashback pheasant tail.